last 3 months going from being somebody who thought they would never want a 3DS to pretty much falling in love with mine. It's actually gotten to the point where I've foregone next gen just to spend a little bit more time with my little gold pimped out 3DS, and I've got a few reasons why I reckon you should too. So for today's episode of The Gist, I'm saying blow off the PS4 and the Xbox One, go spend your hard-earned dollars on one of these. For any of you who are looking at me like I'm crazy in this little internet window, let me start off with a really obvious reason: Nintendo's epic franchises. Nintendo may have struggled massively in the hardware market of late, especially when it comes to that console which shall not be named, but their first-party games are simply awesome. Nintendo has brilliant game worlds built into sprawling franchises, and they haven't let any other platforms get a look in. So, since you're always going to have to pick yourself up a Nintendo-branded console to get in on their lovely franchises, I'd say the 3DS is your best option right now. I'm not opposed to trading it out for my N64 now and then, but it's possible that the latter is getting a tad dated given it's almost 2 decades old. Alright, so that's an easy one, but another reason you should consider buying a 3DS is because of how far the console has come. A lot of people lost interest in the 3DS very quickly after its launch in 2011 because it was, well, awful. The launch games were atrocious, the sales were down the toilet, and it only took 6 months for the device to get a huge price cut, down to $169 from its original $249. Not only that, but Nintendo was so embarrassed they offered gamers who bought it at the original price 10 free NES games and 10 free Game Boy Advance games. So that's the bad part, but the story really does improve from there. Nintendo went on to release the 3DS XL in mid-2012, which, while stacked up against the more appropriately priced original and the child-friendly 2DS, has resulted in 42.74 million units being sold worldwide. Numbers aside, there's a reason the console worked its way into gamers' hearts, and that's because Nintendo worked hard to make every facet of the device better, not to mention packing on a stack of very impressive games. Nintendo certainly do make some decisions that make you wonder if they actually know their audience at all, but there is one thing they're very good at incorporating, and that's backwards compatibility. Yep, I talked about this in my video on how Nintendo will sell Wii U's this year, and it's pretty apt for this segment too. The 3DS will chug on happily with most of your DS games, although it won't go as far back as Game Boy Advance stuff. The resolutions can either be scaled and stretched or native on the 3DS or 3DS XL, depending on whether you opted for the biggest screen. My second to last point is pretty simple: go handheld with a great piece of hardware. My commute is about 20 minutes and most of that is walking, so unless I want to run into pedestrians while liberating Low Rule, I couldn't ever really see the point in owning a handheld console. But I was mistaken. Mostly I game on my PC, occasionally my PS3, and very, very occasionally my Vita. But when I got my 3DS to play Link Between Worlds, I actually found myself sitting in my living room to crack into it, or sofa gaming, which I've never been able to do given I'm mainly mouse and keyboard bound. I've always figured the screen will be too small and the controls finicky, but the 3DS XL is built beautifully. The world can be as immersive as console or PC games, and everything is undeniably smooth. As a piece of hardware, the 3DS feels excellent and runs perfectly. With a timing-intensive game like Link Between Worlds, you notice really quickly if the hardware isn't up to snuff, and the 3DS works like a dream. The last and most important reason is that the majority of gamers are buying consoles because they've got the best lineup of games, and the 3DS has a killer selection. This point is the culmination of all my others: the smooth controls, the epic comeback, and the beautiful franchises. 2013 particularly was an incredible year for 3DS software, from Animal Crossing to Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, Pokemon to Fire Emblem Awakening. So many games that landed on the 3DS last year weren't even specifically portable Game of the Year worthy. They were right up there competing with the best of the PC and console games, and at least for GameSpot, one of these epic games even took out our ultimate Game of the Year pick. This system is definitely not what it used to be, and definitely deserves another look if you've been skeptical. It's loads of fun, exceptionally refined, and features one of the best gaming lineups ever to be packaged into a single console. I'm totally converted. Let me know what you think. As for the hard games that I talked about on last week's episode, you guys were all pretty much on board with Battletoads being insanely difficult. But Grim A Gangster wanted it noted that just because this selection of games is harder doesn't necessarily make them better, and I'm right there with you. A lot of you also wanted to pass on special mentions to The Witcher 2 on hard mode and V's, which is also on the 3DS, so consider it done. Thanks for leaving your thoughts, and I will see you next week.